What's noteworthy about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse? It's loosely adapting a small part actually of the Spider-Verse storyline from the comics, that being a conflict between the different spider people. However, in the comics, it was very minuscule. Here, it's in the forefront, and the stakes of it is a lot more higher because it relates to the whole philosophy of Spider-Man, which all directly ties into what happened with Miles and his spider bite story, which I really like. And of course, considering this is the first part, not everything is concluded straight away, but they did a pretty good setup here, and the cameos surprisingly really help with the storyline as well, which is really nice. But of course, there is still a complete story to tell in this one movie alone, thanks to them telling the origin and life and times of Gwen Stacy, Spider-Woman, and it was handled pretty well from beginning to end. And of course, I cannot forget about the animation style, and it's really on top. I really like that each spider person technically has their own animation style. Sometimes it's very extravagant, or sometimes it's just something simple like a different colors palette in a way. And I really dig that. It was really cool to really emphasize this Spider-Verse. So overall, this is a pretty good follow-up to Into the Spider-Verse, and a pretty nice setup and prelude to Beyond the Spider-Verse, hopefully coming out next year. So yeah, I highly recommend you guys watch it. But if you have, what do you think? What's noteworthy about The Flash? It is based on a very popular Flash comic book storyline, that being Flashpoint, where he travels back in time to save his mother, but in doing so, the future changes drastically with a very different Batman and a very different Superman, along with everything else. But here in the movie, they twisted a little bit here and there to make it feel more in line with DC's movie legacy, such as the alternate Batman being the Michael Keaton Batman, and of course the main conflict, that being them trying to save the world from General Zod, since there's no longer the regular Superman in this world. And what's neat about all of this is that even though it's a big grand scale adventure, they were able to tell a pretty good Flash storyline from beginning to end. And all of the elements such as Batman and Superman really enhances Flash's story and his character. And that's pretty neat. Another thing that I found pretty neat is how they visualize certain abilities of the Flash, similar to how a comic book would illustrate certain abilities of a superhero. And that's pretty cool when you see it in action from time to time. So yes, this is definitely a very creatively constructed movie, and it's definitely a must-see. So yeah, go check it out. But if you have, what do you think? What's noteworthy about Transformers Rise of the Beast? I really like how they were able to blend the humans and the Transformers into one narrative, not only with the fact that the humans have a role to play on the Transformers team, but they also really help enhance the story that Optimus Prime goes through in this movie, which is really great. Because since this takes place in the past, 1994 specifically, we get to see how Optimus Prime evolves into becoming a great leader. And even the Maximals really help with this storyline, especially Optimus Primal. Even though the Maximals didn't get that much screen time in the movie as some people might hope, which is a bit unfortunate, but they did a pretty decent job with the role that they were given in this movie. I also really like the action sequences. You actually get to see what's going on with all the barrage of robots fighting each other. It looks pretty good. The CGI looks pretty good, and all the models of all the Transformers look pretty spectacular. And I also really like that they, from time to time, use the actual cars during the action sequences, like during certain chase sequences. That is actually pretty cool to see. So yeah, another thing that I also want to say is that, of course, no spoilers. There won't be any spoilers in this review, but I do really appreciate how they executed the end credit scene, because it was pretty unexpected, and it caught me off guard, and it gave a lot of potential for the future of this universe. And if an end credit scene does that, you succeeded in doing an end credit scene. That's all I say in my opinion. But anyways, if you watched it, and go watch it if you haven't already, what do you think? What's noteworthy about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny? I found it very interesting how they did not try too hard to replicate the original style and feel compared to how they did the previous movie, which was the exact opposite. And I understand why. It is very difficult to replicate that classic feel and style in the modern day. So I understand why they made this kind of change, but there is some sense of that original style within this movie, especially with the flashbacks, which did it pretty well, surprisingly enough. And I do find it a bit unfortunate how they treat the aftermath of the fourth film, but it did lead to a very interesting character story arc for Indiana Jones in this film, so I guess it gets pretty alright. I do like the interactions between Indiana Jones and the new character Helena Shaw. They had some fun interactions, and the character does have some great moments. But I do understand why some people might find her a bit annoying. But I do like the partnership and how the two grow throughout the movie. Yeah, I do found it a pretty interesting and fun film. I understand if people aren't really a fan of this one much. It's definitely not on the same level as the classic. It definitely did not reach that far, but at the very least, it's a more decent adventure to end off Indiana Jones escapades compared to the fourth film. So I guess that at least counts for something. In my opinion, that's what I think. Which, speaking of which, what do you think? Spider-Man absolutely clobbered June, and it's easy to see why. Despite the fact that we had a lot of summer movies such as Indiana Jones, Transformers, The Flash, and a lot of other summer blockbusters in between that, a lot of people really like talking about Spider-Man the most this June, which makes sense considering the character is a very appealing one to a lot of people. On the outside, a lot of people really like how visually interesting the character looks with his suit designs and of course how he fights his enemies using his web shooters. But on the inside, a lot of people really like him for how they focus a lot on the personal side of being a superhero, and those stories can relate to real life, making him a very relatable character to a lot of people. And of course, the recent movie Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse really does a good job at, depicting these two attributes that people love, especially since it's an animation. So it's no wonder why a lot of people like talking about it for so long this June in 2023. But yeah, what do you think?
What's noteworthy about Mission Impossible 2 from the year 2000? Give me a second, everybody. I think the laundry's done. I'll be back in a sec. What's noteworthy about Mission Impossible 2 released in the year 2000? I really like how this movie showcases different types of kicks that Ethan Hunt can do. It really adds a lot to his character. I also really love this is the only movie that I know of that shows the most luxurious second-hand cars imaginable. Oh man, it's so cool. And I also really like how much they showcase different white birds throughout the films. More movies need more white birds. I'm telling you right now, man. This movie is really great. And don't get me started on the usual look Ethan Hunt has in this. Lena, what are you doing? And why is he here? I think I'll be going now. I think the cookies are done. So yeah, even though a lot of people really love the Mission Impossible films, this movie in particular from the year 2000 is at the bottom of almost everybody's list, and it's easy to see why. It isn't the best structured wise compared to literally everything else in this franchise, but hey, it does have some merits considering the director has done some great action sequences in the past. You get to see that here. Yeah, sure, it isn't as great as his previous works, but it's still very enjoyable, and it does kind of carry the movie throughout the entirety of its runtime. So if you happen to stumble upon this movie, probably on TV or something, give it a watch. It is still pretty enjoyable. How much enjoyment you'll get from his action sequences, it depends on the person, especially since this was released in the year 2000. But yeah, of course, that leads into the question, what do you think?
What's noteworthy about Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1? It does efficiently and effectively what a Mission Impossible movie does best. And that is, of course, do something that makes you go, whoa, that's actually pretty cool. And of course, able to give you a feeling of suspense throughout the entire movie. And somehow it's even better than the previous installment. And the previous installment already did it pretty well. And of course, the writing is also pretty good. And of course, the delivery of this dialogue from the actors is also done pretty effectively. And of course, There is some odd moments when it comes to the dialogue. I do find it weird sometimes how they repeat technically what the main MacGuffin is, but it's still pretty alright. And of course, there are some decent action sequences, but this one moment in the car chase was a bit odd, but I still had a lot of fun with it. Although some people might find it a bit jarring. But yes, I do really like it, even though this is a part one. They were able to tell technically a complete story from start to finish, and it's the main story, not some side story that they completed. So yeah, it's like phase one of the mission is done, time to move on to phase two. And I really like the story that they presented here, really talking about how Ethan Hunt became a part of the Impossible Mission Force and how that relates to our brand new character. And it's actually done pretty well. So of course, really excited for the next one, and this is already pretty good, so highly recommend it. Or if you have watched it, what do you think? The greatest movie crossover just happened this July. If you guys don't know, apparently Tom Cruise watched both Barbie and Oppenheimer and recommends a lot of people to watch both on the same day. First Oppenheimer, then Barbie, because probably something happens in Oppenheimer that a lot of people is gonna be like, a bit like, what? And then they go watch Barbie to cool themselves down. And it's pretty surprising how this happened. And in a way, it's technically a three-movie crossover because, of course, coming up soon in July, we're gonna get Mission Impossible, which of course stars Tom Cruise. Then add the fact that, of course, he technically advertised Oppenheimer and Barbie to go watch it on the same day. It's honestly pretty insane. A lot of people really embrace that, which I really love. It's cool to see people celebrating all these different kinds of movies this July. It's pretty cool actually, and I hope all these movies gain the success that they deserve. It's honestly pretty cool, to be honest with you. That's all I have to say about that. But anyways, what do you think? What's noteworthy about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie from 1990? Which is a very underrated film in my opinion because, yeah, of course the personalities of the turtles are spot on like how they were in the classic 80s cartoon that a lot of people like to watch back in the day. And of course this is roughly based in a way on the Mirage comics where they originally, originated. And it's actually a pretty good adaptation because it did follow a lot of what happens in the comic, but they were able to tweak it in a way to actually make the story more compelling because the original comic was a very basic revenge story and there really wasn't a character arc within that original comic. So I'm glad they were able to fix that and give us a very interesting family dynamic, how the family of the Ninja Turtles with Splinter, connects with a lot of the human characters in this film and a lot of the foot soldiers and everything related to Shredder. And it's a pretty good message for kids within this film, which I really like. It's honestly a pretty good Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Of course, the animatronics are spot on. They look very pseudo-real, I guess, in a way, but still looking a bit cartoony. So yeah, it doesn't look too off-putting. I think it's the best they ever looked in live action and has yet to be topped. So yes, I highly recommend you guys watch this movie, if you can at least. But yes, for those who watch this fantastic film, what do you think?